Hello everyone, friends, this is part 2, support me with a like and a comment, have a nice day.
The door slammed behind Jenna, and I was left standing in the middle of our living room, frozen in disbelief. The weight of her words, those last words, kept echoing in my mind.
You weren't there when I needed you.
The sheer audacity of it cut deeper than I ever thought possible.
I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe.
I stared at the door, the space where she had just stood, willing myself to believe this wasn't real, that the woman I married hadn't just pulled the rug out from under me in the cruelest way imaginable.
But it was real.
She had been with him, Adrian, the driver. I couldn't shake the image of the two of them together. Every moment of their secret meetings, every touch, every kiss, burned through my mind like an uncontrollable fire. I didn't want to feel this way, but it was happening, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I wanted to scream, to shout, to break something. But instead, I sank to the couch, burying my face in my hands. The tears came before I could stop them.
They didn't feel like they belonged to me, this wasn't who I was. I was strong.
I had always been the provider, the protector, the father.
But now? I was just broken.
Just betrayed.
The anger came next.
It was a slow burn that spread from my chest to my arms, to my hands, making my fists clench so tightly that my nails dug into my palms.
How could she? How could she do this to me? To us? And the worst part?
It was all for someone who didn't matter. Adrian was just the driver, just a tool, a way for her to feel seen, feel important, feel desired.
What the hell had I done wrong? Was I really so neglectful, so distant, that it justified everything she'd done? But I couldn't stay angry forever.
The pain washed over me again, this crushing, soul-deep hurt that made me question everything I'd ever known.
Did I even know her at all? Was it all a lie? I needed to know.
I needed to understand how this had happened, how I had let it happen. I was left with nothing but my thoughts and a devastating truth.
The next few days were a blur. I barely ate. I couldn't sleep.
The house felt like a tomb, empty and silent, as though the world had stopped spinning.
I avoided Lucas's room.
I couldn't bear to see him, couldn't face the idea of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't.
I wasn't okay. I couldn't be. Jenna didn't try to contact me.
For the first time in years, I was alone, truly alone, in the home we had built together.
And I didn't know what to do with myself.
I spent hours scrolling through social media, seeing our friends' happy posts, their smiling pictures, their family photos. I used to think we had something special, something real.
Now, it felt like a cruel joke. How could I have been so blind? My whole life was built on lies.
I was married to a woman who had been pretending, wearing a mask for years, and now that mask had come off in the most painful way possible.
Then came the guilt. Why hadn't I noticed sooner? Could I have prevented this? Could I have been more present?
Maybe if I hadn't worked so hard, if I'd paid more attention to her, to us.
Maybe things would have turned out differently. The guilt became unbearable. Every thought was a loop of what-ifs. What if I'd been there for her more? What if I hadn't been so consumed by work, by raising Lucas? Could I have stopped her from straying? But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about being a better husband or a better father. This was about Jenna and her choices.
No amount of my attention, no amount of effort, would have changed what she'd already decided to do. I reached out to my brother, Paul, a couple of days after the confrontation. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me, who would listen.
He came over that evening, and I didn't even have to say anything. The moment he walked through the door, he saw it in my eyes, the devastation, the raw emotion I couldn't hide.
"Jenna," he asked, sitting down beside me on the couch.
I didn't answer right away. I didn't have to.
The truth was written all over my face.
"I don't know what to do, man," I finally muttered. She's been having an affair. I found out about it.
And now she's gone." Paul sighed, rubbing his face with his hands.
"I'm sorry, Tom. That's rough. I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. I stopped, unsure of what I even wanted to say. I don't even know who she is anymore. She's not the woman I married.
I know, Paul said quietly.
But you've got to think about yourself now. You've got to figure out what you want. Don't you think I've already thought about that? I snapped.
But the truth was, I hadn't.
What did I want? What was I supposed to do with the wreckage she left behind?
Listen, Paul continued, I know it's hard right now.
But you're not alone. You've got me, and you've got Lucas. And no matter what happens with Jenna, you're going to get through this.
I didn't know if I believed him at the time, but I appreciated his words.
I didn't feel like I had anyone else.
My whole world had just been turned upside down, and I was struggling to hold on to anything. That night, I sat up late, replaying every moment with Jenna, trying to find something I missed, trying to understand how we got here. The pain was all-consuming.
But something inside me was starting to change. I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't live in this misery. I had to make a decision.
The days dragged on like the worst kind of waiting room, where time had no meaning. Each minute that passed felt heavier, and every hour that stretched between now and the moment I had to decide what to do with my life seemed like an eternity. I couldn't stop thinking about Jenna, about everything we had been through, and everything that was now broken. I had to figure out what came next, for me, for Lucas, for this life I tried so hard to build.
But what was left of it? Could I honestly go back to the life we had, knowing what I now knew? Could I ever look at her the same way again? Or was it time to finally let go?
I spent most of the week avoiding Jenna's calls, letting the phone ring until the voicemail picked up.
She hadn't come back to the house, and frankly, I was relieved. I didn't want to see her yet. I needed space.
I needed time to think about everything, about the family we'd built, about the future.
But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid the truth forever. Sooner or later, I'd have to confront her again.
I called Paul again, the same guy who'd been there for me since the beginning of all this, and told him I needed some advice. I knew he wasn't going to sugarcoat it for me, and that's exactly what I needed.
You can't keep running from this, Tom, he told me over the phone. I know you're hurting right now, but you have to face it head on. You're going to have to decide if you can forgive her or if you're done. Either way, it's gonna hurt. I wasn't ready to hear it, but I knew Paul was right. The longer I kept avoiding the truth, the more it would eat at me. It was time to make a decision. That evening, Jenna called me again, and I finally answered.
Her voice was tentative, almost apologetic, but there was something underlying her tone that I couldn't shake. She wasn't really sorry, at least, not in the way I needed her to be.
I want to talk, Tom, she said, and I could hear the faint edge of desperation in her voice. Please, I want to explain. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need you to listen. I could hear the words she wanted to say, the rehearsed apology she had been working on, but I wasn't sure if I could take it seriously. How could I? How could I listen to the same woman who had torn my life apart, who had betrayed everything we'd built, now pretending like it was all just a mistake? Jenna, I said, my voice even, despite the anger bubbling under the surface, I don't think there's anything left to say.
You don't mean that, she said quickly, her voice cracking a little.
I love you. I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know how it happened. I could feel my pulse quicken. The hurt was rising again, and I tried to keep my cool, but it wasn't easy. Love me? You love me?
Jenna, you've been sleeping with another man for months.
Do you even know what that does to someone? To me?
I said, the words coming out sharp.
You don't get to pull that card now. You don't get to pretend like everything's okay just because you're sorry.
She fell silent for a moment, the weight of my words settling in between us.
It wasn't the confrontation I had imagined.
I wasn't looking for an apology, but there was a part of me that wanted something, some kind of answer, some kind of explanation for what had happened, for how we got here.
I don't know what else to say, she finally whispered, her voice small. I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but I'm sorry. I am. I swear. I was done. I had heard enough.
I'm not interested in your apologies, Jenna, I said, my voice growing firmer.
I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend like this is something we can fix. You destroyed us. You destroyed me. I've got to think about Lucas, and I need to think about myself. I'm done. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her heartbeat through the phone, the sound of a woman who had just realized she was about to lose everything. Tom, please, don't do this, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I love you. I'll do anything.
But it was too late. The decision had already been made.
The next day, I contacted a lawyer.
I didn't know if I was fully ready for the divorce, but deep down, I knew it was the only way forward. My heart was still shattered, but I couldn't stay in this toxic relationship anymore. I had to take care of myself.
I had to move on, for me and for Lucas. I didn't tell Jenna about the divorce proceedings yet. I didn't want to drag out the pain any longer. I didn't want to drag Lucas into it either.
The hardest part was knowing that we were about to tear apart everything I had fought for, everything I had believed in. But the longer I sat with the decision, the more I realized it was the only thing I could do. This was my life, and it was no longer worth sacrificing for someone who had shattered my trust so completely. I had to move forward, no matter how hard it was. Thank you very much for watching. Please support me by subscribing, liking and of course commenting. See you next videos.